All right, good evening. We're tracking the tropics. Deon Guillory here with Storm Tracker Chief Meteorologist Jesse Gunkel. And so we're doing this not only to explain to you everything that's happening with the storm, but to get your questions answered, because there's so much going on with this. And a lot of you out there have questions. I know when I was in the gym this morning, a lot of people kept stopping me, asking me things about it. And there's just some things that I can't answer, but you can.
Yeah, we've had obviously probably the big one being out there, the alarming rain totals out there, and the numbers, a lot of numbers are being thrown out at us at this point. Anywhere from 20+ inches of rainfall, some areas seeing 4 to 12 inches of rainfall. Well, that all just really depends on where you live, because I'm going to show you the actual map in just a second, but we're going to see most of that rainfall obviously right in this vicinity if it follows the current path that it's currently set at this point. Main thing also, what happened earlier today at around 4 o'clock this afternoon, they did include a lot of coastal parishes from Intracoastal City now all the way to Grand Isle underneath that hurricane warning. They issue that when they're expecting hurricane conditions within the next 36 hours. And that could happen as soon as most likely tomorrow night, Deon. We could be seeing some pretty strong wind gusts into that 70 to 75 mile category along our coastline. It still looks like Vermilion Bay and the Atchafalaya Basin going to be where those strong storms are going to be heading at this point, but they've also move that tropical storm warning a little bit further inland at this point. That includes East and West Baton Rouge Parish, Ascension, Assumption, Livingston, Tangipahoa, St. Tammany, and that goes all the way to the west at this point. Obviously, I see that you're answering some questions. If you got questions or answers, obviously try to fire them off at us, and I'll try to get to as many as possible at this point. So we've got a lot more areas underneath that tropical storm warning, Deon. That includes all parishes around Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Maurepas, and even Lake Bourne at this point. And the light pink there is a tropical storm watch. However, I still think, again, the meat of this, it's going right into Louisiana, and it's going to be affecting southeastern Louisiana. If you got a question, just kind of butt in.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the, but I have a particular question for myself. So a lot of people were talking about, the people that I have been talking to throughout the day have been referencing what happened in New Orleans yesterday.
Yes.
And in conjunction with what could come. Paint the picture and explain what that has to do, or with what it doesn't have to do with what we could see.
Yeah, Deon, yesterday in New Orleans, we had flash flooding. Obviously, that was associated with tropical moisture in the atmosphere. Again, it's easy. We had precipitable water values that were almost historic yesterday for this time of the year. We're talking at about almost 99%. Obviously, that means the atmosphere, that bucket is almost filled to the brim, and we dumped it out yesterday on portions of New Orleans. Well, what happened is that was just one cloud in that localized area. So what happens is, because we're looking at a tropical environment, that's always possible. We could see that type of substantial rain in pockets possibly starting out tonight, going throughout the day on Friday and into Saturday as this system approaches. You can already start to see here that we are starting to see some rain bands obviously in the mix moving through the capital area. Obviously there's a little bit, a couple showers a little bit further south, nothing too much there. The majority of the thunderstorm activity has actually sat to the southwest of the center of the circulation, mainly because kind of in the mix here, you've got a little bit of dry air in the mid-levels. That's why I'm not seeing that thunderstorm activity developing on the northern side of the storm. We're also getting a little bit of wind shiver. You see it kind of blown off the top. And that's a lot of those storms, watch those clouds, again, kind of blown off towards the southwest. Well, that's kind of what we want. We are still kind of in the mix that this is going to be a very ugly, and it's not going to be the typical type of system you expect. You notice the well-defined eye?
Right.
That's not happening. No. You're looking at a very, if you kind of look closely, you can kind of see the spin up, a very broad circulation, and that is the center. Yes, the pressure is dropping in this system, but we're talking a very wide path right here. So again, it's not going to have time, I don't think, to tighten up. That's why I don't see much more in the way of intensification as we make our way closer to land. So as it gets to landfall, probably Friday night, early on Saturday. That's the good news here. Maybe I still see some minor intensification, so some strengthening over the next day and a half. Probably a strong tropical storm, or just, again, we're talking maybe about 75-mile-an-hour wind gusts, probably just along the coastline. But I think for us in the capital area, we're talking tropical storm force winds at most, I think, with this system. Again, but the concern here is obviously we're going to get that comma signature And I don't know if you've ever seen that in some type of storms, but you get that common where a lot of that heavy rainfall and thunderstorm activity is going to be all off to one side, and then you're going to see that tail end extend into the Gulf of Mexico. That is the concern, because if you notice, that's a conveyor belt. That's a lot of moisture pumping in. And then it's going to continue to pile on, and we're going to see rain probably probably late Friday, all day Saturday, and maybe even most of Sunday at this point. Just showing you again a little bit closer. You can see we got a couple of decent storms out there. There was a significant weather advisory for Lafayette. A little bit of lightning out there. Some lightning thunderstorms obviously pushing back out into the Gulf of Mexico. Kind of associated with this, some outer rain bands at this point. Question, Deon?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions. Thank you guys for joining us here and bringing in your questions. I want to get to Joy Patton. Thank you for posting your question. Will the Baton Rouge, Mississippi River flood?
The Mississippi River in Baton Rouge, right now it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. We have a couple factors that we kind of go through, and one of those is how much rain do we get ahead of time, obviously before the storm makes landfall or inches a little bit closer to us. We got to figure that one out first, because if we get a bunch of rainfall, all of our water, mostly here, whatever falls on top of us, it doesn't go into the Mississippi River. That's the confusing part here. Most of the river across the U.S. all filters into the Mississippi River.
Right.
Not for us. Most of it goes into the Amite, the Comite, and the Tchefuncte rivers. And what happens is in the Tickfall River, and that all filters into Lake Maurepas and Lake Pontchartrain, all right? So that's all on the north side of New Orleans. The concern here is you get a storm surge and you get these winds over days and days and days. Obviously that southerly flow, meaning coming off the Gulf of Mexico, pushing that water inland. And as that water pushes inland, it's almost like a dam. You're kind of pushing that water inland. If we get a bunch of heavy rainfall as that system is moving up towards the north and northwest here, well, what happens is those winds keep coming in like this, pushing that water inland from the lakes, obviously where the Amite meets here. And then the concern is how much water do we have in those waterways first, because that's where you start to get that backwater flooding, because, again, it runs into a dam, so water's got to go somewhere, and it pushes out. And obviously we don't have levees in a lot of areas on some of our inner rivers like the Amite and stuff like that down in Ascension Parish. That's why with other storms, again, that water starts to push backwards and almost goes in the opposite direction, which is kind of scary. Mississippi River, I think we're actually going to be fine. I think a lot of that water is going to push downstream. We're still fine. The water levels are actually dropping on the Mississippi River at this point, so we're well below.
Which is what we want.
Yeah, again, where the levees hold, we're well below that at this point, so I don't see that being an issue.
All right, let's get to another question. Before a question, D. Smith, thank you. She's from Morgan City. She's watching. And Tiffany Guillory, not sure if we're related, but we're probably cousins.
Could be a family member.
Guillories are all one big family. But her question is, how many inches are expected for Zachary?
Zachary, again, it could be in the 6 to 12 inch category. It could be in that 10 to 20 inch category. All this track has to do is move a few miles to the west or a few miles to the east, and those numbers could be completely different. And that's the sad news. That's the toughest part about this. Just know that there's going to be a lot of rainfall, and you just don't want to be underneath one of those rain bands. If you start seeing that these rain bands start to set up, again, we could be seeing this overall structure where a lot of that rainfall could be, and I'll go back to the picture here. You'll see that, go back and you'll see that, look at some of those thunderstorm bands are way out here. You notice that? Notice the difference here. So again, we could be, if that system moves over here, some of those rain bands could be completely skipping our area. If it starts to tighten up, and that's what a lot of models are indicating, then those rain bands will start to kind of move through southeastern Louisiana and a little bit closer to that center of circulation. That, again, all depends on that. But again, if we start to get that jog, I still see it kind of sliding a little bit further west, but if we get that jog a little bit to the east, then obviously those rain totals will start to ramp up a little bit. And again, that's the obvious concern. So I can't pinpoint how much exact rain we're going to have in Zachary. I just know that there's a chance that it could be very high at this point. Now again, we're talking a strong tropical storm moving past us. Obviously, we kind of sit this same latitude here.
Right.
So you can see, we could see some wind gusts probably in the maybe 50 range, I think, for us. Possibly some 60s here in the capital area. I do want to point out, if we do get some heavy rainfall before that system and those strong winds arrive, well then, yes, there is that possibility that we could have some, tree damage. Trees get toppled down. We get some limb damage, fall on power lines. I think power outages are going to be one of our biggest issues here. And if that's the case, just kind of stay alert. Again, if you have some trees that kind of look in set shape, just I wouldn't stay on that side of your house just in case if we get that heavy rainfall. And then it starts to move through. It's still a very slow mover, but at least it's moving. It's not like the other storms, the ones that you think about, the Harveys.
Just sit.
2016, we had that same system sit over the same spot for nearly 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
So again, this is not that, okay? I want to point that out.
And that's good that you pointed that out, because a lot of people
are
thinking
concerned
about
and
2016.
Yeah, I get that. A lot of people have asked me that question too. Is this going to be like 2016? We're seeing these crazy rain totals. Again, that all is going to come in bands. It's not, the system is going to move. That's good news. It looks like by Sunday, we're talking the northern half of the state.
Okay. Another question we have, Brenda Richmond Henson, she's in Denham Springs. Thank you for watching. D. Smith, she's worried about the Rangers, pretty much like my possible cousin's question about the rain totals. She's in Morgan City, and she's worried about the rain there because she has to work.
Yep, rain totals. Obviously, the rain's going to start moving in probably mid to late tomorrow, and it could stick with us through probably late Sunday going into Monday before it finally starts to clear the area. As you notice here, again, kind of looking at the big path here, this is when we could start to see those hurricane force winds. It's going to be for a very brief window. You see tropical storm here, tropical storm here. So notice how as soon as you move inland, it quickly collapses. So it starts to weaken a little bit as soon as you get inland. So there is only a very fine window right now. It still looks like landfall probably very early in the morning on Saturday at this point. Again, if it holds this track, it could walk a little bit, but I don't see that changing much right now. Probably sometime before 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday at this point will be the landfall. Show you some of the track models. They moved a little bit further east, are starting to come back a little bit further towards the west at this point. Obviously, a lot of them show going right through Baton Rouge at this point. Honestly, if it becomes a loose signature, that may be the best thing for us. Yeah, we may get a couple stronger winds here, but we won't deal with as much rainfall. That will be more of an issue than now to areas such around I-55. You know, we're talking now Ascension, Tangipahoa,
even
St.
extending
Tammany,
to Mississippi.
even into Mississippi at that point. So the rain could shift a little bit. Obviously, the Euro, the one that's been kind of scary, this is the one that's been kind of blowing up social media. And when you put you keep this storm system, which is a global model, and it's kind of one we've been sticking with, obviously the strongest of all the models. And it's also showing the most rainfall because it is a stronger, showing a more well-built system. Obviously, you got a bigger and better engine, you get more rainfall out of it. That's why some models are going 25 plus inches. Well, it's usually been this one. So that's why we're going to keep an eye on it. And as you notice, kind of more of that, it's not circular, it's more in that comma shape, and then extends back into the Gulf of Mexico. We're talking late Sunday going into Monday time-wise, that we can still be dealing with some rain bands here. So some of those feeder bands could still pump a lot of rainfall across the area, and that's where we could easily see, 2, maybe 4 inches of rain per hour. I also want to show you the GFS, and this is the American model. Notice, kind of following what's going on a little bit closer out in the Gulf. As you notice, very broad circulation, not tight. The other one showed you that very tight. I want to go back, and it was showing you very, very tight. This is going a little bit wider, keeping a lot of that going slightly further west. And that seems to be the possible case right now, that it continues to inch a little bit further west. Still looking at a lot of heavy rainfall for southeastern Louisiana. But as you notice here, again, it's not as close to the center, all right, to the center of that circulation. And that could be the issue, where it could be spaced out. If it kind of follows here, and this track's closer to Baton Rouge, well, then New Orleans, mouth of the Mississippi River, and all these areas in between, we're now talking an issue for Mississippi, all the way up into the Macomb, maybe the Jackson area, because it's now a little bit further towards the east at this point, and then it starts to drive through. You can see all that heavy rainfall driving through, and then hopefully our rain totals are a little bit lower here at this point. So just showing you another model. Obviously also showing that a lot of these rain bands extend way out from the center. We're going to show you our in-house model, and as you notice, this one too, kind of following that same path now between Cameron Parish and Vermilion Bay, so right around Vermilion Parish, and you see that a lot of those bands extend back onto the Gulf of Mexico, and we still got those outer bands, obviously, that extend a little bit.
Still the comma.
Still almost that comma shape, kind of unorganized, where most of the action obviously is in that eastern side. So that's why I think right now rain is our biggest issue. I think wind impacts aren't going to be as much as we originally anticipated, because I don't see it getting much above we're lucky again. There's going to be a very short window that we could get to hurricane strength before landfall, but I'm calling for a strong tropical storm at this point. Again, but don't let that. Don't let your guard down. Even if I say strong tropical, very weak, a lot of people are like, well, it's just a Category 1. Well, it's just a tropical storm.
It only takes one.
That's not the concern with this system. You still could have some life-threatening storm surge with this system for Plaquemines Parish, a lot of those areas, St. Bernard, and around the New Orleans area. Still could be a big-time issue, obviously, and obviously the flash flooding and a lot of that rainfall, because we all know that rain can add up very quickly here. So, I mean, I even today went out there and cleared my gutters.
Yeah, and that's something that you can do now.
You still have some time to do it. Obviously, it's getting kind of dark now, but tomorrow morning, get out there early, clean your gutters, make sure your storm drains are cleared. If you have a drainage ditch behind your house, make sure that's not clogged up at this point. Any other questions?
Yeah, I hope I'm saying this right. Ungeller Bright, sorry if I messed up your name. She's asking, what about people who live in Lutcher, Gramercy, Paulina, Convent, and Vacherie?
Yeah, that whole area. Heavy rainfall, probably the biggest issue out here right now. I think storm surge should kind of stop somewhere around New Orleans and mainly south of there. So New Orleans has the Mississippi River all the way down to the mouth. But as you notice here, I think that should be fine. The river should be fine there, but again, it's that potential heavy rainfall that will be the concern in that area. So again, that could be, we just got to see where these bands set up, and that is going to be, that's the difficult part here. Does dry air still kind of filter in and kind of allow those bands to build? Do we still have a little wind shear to kind of rip these systems apart before that system before it actually makes its way inland?
Yeah, so, because it's so disorganized, it's really tough to pinpoint everything.
Yeah, so, and again, it's pretty crucial as to what happens really over the next day. When does it start to make that northward turn? Because it's still only going west at this point.
Gotcha.
So we're still under a flash flood watch, and obviously here's some models. The one from the National Hurricane Center, I don't have the graphic actually for that, but it does show that we could have some spots out there that we're calling for about 20 inches of rainfall. So again, that is a big time issue. And again, that's kind of factoring in all those models that heavy rainfall still sits on the eastern side of this storm.
We want to thank you guys for joining us here. We're going to get to as many questions as we can because there's so much information here, and Jesse is doing a great job of breaking it down for us so we can all understand it, so we can all be safe when the system comes our way. David Crane has a question now. Any reports of hail yet? Or is that even a possibility with this?
The hail chance is low. This is tropical air, so you usually don't get much in the way of hail. It's going to be, obviously, biggest concern with some of these feeder bands that are going to come in is those isolated spin-ups, and that's what we're talking about. Maybe a weak tornado or two, those EF0s, those EF1s. You'll see some possible funnel clouds out there. May look like a tornado. Could be very scary. Also, if you live near a body of water, say Lake Pontchartrain, like we did, Causeway,
yesterday.
All that footage from yesterday, that's exactly why. It was just a water spout out there. So that could be happening. If you live along the coast, well, yeah, you could see a water spout from one of those bands kind of moving inland.
Right. Okay. Another question from Brandy Threaton. She says, what about the Ameeton Central and Denham flood level there?
Right now, water levels are fine. We've had a couple storms come through. I've been checking the river stages at this point, but nothing that, again, that could all change quickly, and that's why we need to kind of keep an eye on those river stages. If you go on our website, we've got a link, obviously, to the local areas, because it's hard to pinpoint exactly where everybody is. Again, a lot of this, again, you got to kind of watch where each and every one of these rain bands set up, because obviously it's not going to be an issue if a lot of this rainfall is south. If you live in Central, Zachary, Baker, if it's all south of I-10, then you guys are clear. However, that could be a big time issue then for everybody in Ascension, Gonzales, Santima, Prairieville. We're talking Port Vincent, and a lot of those areas a little bit further south could be dealing with the issue at this point.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there. We want to thank you for joining us for this. Of course, we will be back on TV on NBC Local 33 News at 10 for much more. Jesse will have the most up-to-date forecast because the new one comes out at 10.
Well, again, yeah, we got another update coming out at 10, and obviously you saw that it did upgrade a little bit.
Yeah.
The winds got a little bit stronger, showing some intensification. Let me back up just one more time to that, just to show you that the path really has not changed much. Still kind of looking at Vermilion Bay or between there and Cameron Parish for landfall. Let me jump back here and, yeah, with my trusty garage door opener over here. All right, so yeah, again, winds up to 45 now. and we've got some gusts up to about 50. Look at this, it's crawling at 3 miles per hour, so it's even kind of slowed some of its forward speed down because earlier it was moving at about 5 miles per hour. And again, it's still sitting just a little bit south of the mouth of the Mississippi River. And I'll show you that, kind of jumping back. Again, we are now 90 miles south of the mouth of the Mississippi River, obviously because it hasn't really moved throughout the afternoon hours.
And it's moving very slowly at this point. All right, thank you guys so much for joining us here for this Facebook Live. And if you picked us up on our website, don't forget, download the BR Proud app for more information. And Jesse will have the latest update coming up at 10 on NBC Local 33 News.